Okay, so in the last class, we have discussed about what exactly the function of compiler, as we are also familiar with compiler and how it is different from its cousins, say the interpreter, right? So these were the things we have discussed in the last class. It was the introductory class. Now, we have also discussed about this thing, the whole of the compilation process actually will be divided into front end and the back end. And the result of the front end, the output is an intermediate code. What exactly is intermediate code at the end of this class will be more clear to you. And the result of the backend is a machine code which is dependent on the internal structure of the computer. So this much we have discussed in the last class. Now let's go into the front end part, where actually the front end function is divided into two parts: the scanning or the lexical analysis, which is generating the token, and the token will be used as the input for the next phase, which is the parser. Also, it is known as syntax analyzer. And this syntax analyzer will, or the parser will generate the intermediate representation of our code. Okay. Now, what exactly is token? Token is basically whatever data we have, whatever symbols we are using in our code, that will be divided into different categories. One may be operands, another may be operator, or it can be identifier, it can be a number, or it can be a do while keywords that is used in the program. So accordingly, the entire thing will be categorized into different tokens. So tokens are like this. When I'm saying that I eat rice, in our mind we know that I is a pronoun. So this when we are categorizing the I as pronoun, this pronoun is the token, similar to token. Okay, so is it clear to you, the token part? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Token part, is it clear to you a little bit? Okay. So just try to understand that whatever is we are writing in the program, that will be first categorized into different tokens. These tokens are similar to when we are like categorizing our normal language into verb, noun, pronoun, etc. It's similar to that. Okay. Now these tokens will be used as an input to the parser. Another important thing when we're talking about scanner or the lexical analysis is that a tool called Lex. The Lex is basically using Lex will generate some tokens. Okay, so if you have to write a compiler, we have to take help of tools Lex and Yacc. We can write our own compiler using Lex and Yacc. Okay, now what is Yacc? Yacc, the full form of Yacc is YACC, yet another compiler, which is basically a parser. So first we'll generate a set of tokens using the Lex tool called Lex, and then it will be fed through Yacc tool to generate the parser. Okay. Now this, after the output of these two tools, will be able to find out whether your because you'll write a grammar using the Yacc, and it will be able to find whether your whatever you're writing, it is according to is there any syntax error or not. Okay. So ultimately what we do when we run a compiler, it is giving us either it is compiling or it is giving us some error. So the result of the Lex and Yacc, if we write something using Lex and Yacc, it will also give us similar kind of output. Okay. Now, when we come to the parser part, the parser is basically, it is using context-free grammar. For the time being, you just remember the term context-free grammar. In details, we'll learn about context-free grammar when we'll study syntax analysis part. Okay. Now, context-free grammar, one important thing is it is recursively calling itself. This is one of the characteristics of context-free grammar. Say, for example, see, if you see here, the expression is equal to expression operator term. See, the expression is calling itself. Okay, so say for example, you have a expression 2x plus 3 or x plus y into 3. Okay, so you have to find out whether it is syntactically correct or not, given this grammar. Say, for example, this grammar is given to you and you have to find out this particular line is syntactically correct or not using this grammar. Now, what is happening is that first line x plus 3, it is x plus 3 into 4 or x plus y into 4. So x plus y is basically is fitting this part. Okay, we can write that this expression is x plus y into this term. It can be a number or an identifier. So this is a number 4. So first x plus y into 4, and then this expression is again can be converted into the entire thing. Like we can see that using this particular grammar, we can find that this line, the x plus y into 3, is syntactically correct. So this is a little bit of discussion. Maybe in the later on when we go into details of it, it will be more clear to you. But for the time being, you try to understand that this is an example of context-free grammar where basically the grammar is calling itself several times. So I think you have a little bit idea of context-free grammar, how it looks like. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am, clear.
Clear? Okay, so I can proceed, or you need some explanation here?
No, ma'am, proceed.
Okay. See, this is what I was talking about. See, if we are given an expression id plus 2 minus y. So x plus 2 minus y. This is my expression given, and I have to find out whether this is syntactically correct or not given this grammar for a particular language. Okay, this grammar is given for a particular language. Similarly, when we are running a Java compiler, the Java compiler also has some context-free grammar written in Lex or Yacc, using Lex and Yacc, which will find out whether this line I have written is syntactically correct or not. Similarly, here also, say, this is how, see, this is X is an identifier. So this is already, it has passed through the scanner. So it is already identified that this is an ID. So X plus num, this is a number, and this is again an identifier. See, this is what is given to us. Expression is equal to expression operator term, again expression operator term, and then expression is term. So this is how basically using this tree structure we can find out that this particular is syntactically correct. This particular tree is basically is coming from this structure. Expression, this is basically the starting node. So this is the starting node, okay? And after this is my starting node. This is the starting node, and then expression operator term. After this is again I am this one, this particular one, again I am writing expression operator term, because this is an expression, it is recursively calling itself. Okay. So is it a little bit clear how a parse tree is generated using the context-free grammar?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So ultimately, at the end of the front end, this one part is they have not mentioned here. Maybe it is included in the parser part, is semantic analysis. at the end of semantic analysis, syntax tree, abstract syntax tree, this is very important, will actually generate some syntax tree which will convert, from that it will be converted into IR or intermediate representation. See, AST is often used as IR between front end and back end. So this tree ultimately will be converted into a structure like this: X plus Y minus X plus 2 minus Y. Okay, so this will be my this will be used to generate the intermediate representation, which will be act as an input to the backend process. So I think till now what we have learned is that we'll categorize using, in the scanner phase, we will categorize every symbols in the code into different tokens, and that will be fed to the parser phase. The parser will, using the context tree joiner, the parser will generate a syntax tree to find out whether it is syntactically correct or not, and then it will convert this into an abstract syntax tree, which will be used to convert my code into intermediate representation. So till now it is clear to you how the function of front end will go on, and then we'll go into the individual block to discuss about in details how they are getting generated in the later on classes. Now, what is happening in the back end? The back end has got two parts. We have an intermediate representation, and the back end will have an instruction selection and register allocation. Okay. Now, instruction selection is will choose some instruction which will actually act faster than the other things. So these are the things which are important, like when we'll when we'll choose the instruction. Say for example, you know that addition is faster than multiplication. So if possible, if a job can be done using the addition, we can choose it over multiplication. So this kind of work will be done in instruction selection part. And once it is done, we'll convert this into a machine dependent code using the individual register of that particular machine. Okay. Now, one important thing is missing here is that in between the front end and the back end, there is a middle. It is called the code optimization phase, where the IR that will be generated from the front end will convert this into we'll try to minimize the number of instruction, and there are many other ways we can do it. There is a chapter in your syllabus, code optimization. There will get to know different methods that will be used for code optimization. And see, the input is an IR and the output is also an IR, but it will be lesser number of code. So that when we'll generate actually the machine code, the number of instruction will be less. Ultimately, the goal for the middle end or the code optimization is to reduce the runtime. Okay. So this is what I was talking about. These are the different methods, and in details we'll discuss about this when we'll study that chapter: the constant propagation, common sub-expression elimination, redundant store elimination, dead code elimination. These are the different methodologies that are used for code optimization. Okay. So for the time being, you just understand that the code optimization is used to reduce the number of steps and to reduce the runtime. Now, this is basically what we have discussed now can be divided into this number of stages. We have a high level language, and it will generate an assembly code, or the code which is dependent on the machine, of the internal structure of the machine. It will be written using the register structure of the machine. And ultimately, the lexical analyzer is what we have talking about is the scanner. So lexical analyzer will generate some token, and that will be fed to syntax analyzer, which will generate a parse tree. Now, see, this particular part we have not discussed, the semantic analyzer. I think all of you are familiar with the term, the syntax and the semantic, how they are different. The syntax is basically when we are saying that I eat rice, and I'll say that yes, using the English, if it is an English language, it is syntactically correct. And again, if I say that I eat, say I eat building, okay, we know that this is syntactically correct, but we know that the meaning wise this is not correct. Similarly, when we are talking about a line which is syntactically correct, but say for example, when we are that kind of type mismatch problem. The type mismatch problem, if you will understand this, say for example, we are writing this, we are adding to float number and we are assigning this to an integer. Actually, if we go by syntax, this is correct, but semantically this is not correct. So this will ask you for a type mismatch error. So these kind of error are basically handled with semantic analyzer phase. Once it is done, it will generate some intermediate code. This I'll give you an examples in the next slide. We'll discuss how exactly the intermediate code look like, and then this comes the code optimizer part. This is the middle level of middle end, or what we are talking about, the optimization of code, which will reduce the number of instruction. Ultimately, this is done to reduce the runtime of compilation. And once it is done, the target code will be generated, which is a machine dependent code. And in all the phases, it can generate some error. And also this is the symbol table, which is very important. Whatever, say for example, first when we are doing the lexical analysis, all the symbols that is used here will be stored in a symbol table, and this symbol will be used as reference in all the other phases. So this is very important. The symbol table will be generated first when we'll categorizing everything used in the lexical analyzer phase. Okay. Now I think you have got the book, right? That I have sent yesterday, the PDF book.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I will just straight away go into the page numbers, probably 7 of the yearbook. That book I have sent you, because this example is very good, and that's why I thought let's discuss it from here only. See, can you see the phase wise how they have? Can you see the book now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
Yes, ma'am.
let's see the phases. Just go through. I'll ask you to go through this particular diagram for 2 minutes, and then tell me with whatever I have discussed in the class, it is a little bit you understand. I know there will be some queries, and that I'll address, but I'll ask you to go through the phases starting from they have used the input and how it is getting phases. That you just go through, and then I'll whatever query you have, I'll address. Can you see this? Can you see the till now? Is it? Can you see it?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
You cannot see it now. Okay. Now it is it is coming, right?
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it clear? Whatever I have discussed, is it clear a little bit? See, I think one thing is you need a little bit clarification. The position they are assigning this as identifier 1, ID 1. Okay? And they are storing this in a symbol table. So whenever we are referring to ID 1 later on, we know that ID 1 is basically position. So this is already stored in the symbol table. Okay? So here ultimately the tokenization is done. And after in the syntax analyzer phase, this has been converted into a parse tree. Okay? And then the parse tree that I was talking about is that ultimately this is 60. So that has to be probably these identifiers are float. So this has to be, otherwise a type mismatch problem will take place. So this has to be converted into a float. So once it is done, actually the intermediate code, if you look into it, it is nothing but we are writing it one by one. Say for example, this particular line, it has got an assignment, a plus, a star, multiplication, then a conversion to float, all 4 operations in a single line. Now what they are doing is that in the intermediate code generation, first operation is they're converting this into a float and it is assigning to a variable. Then this variable is getting added with ID3. ID3 is my rate. And then this is T1. And then this T2 is getting added to ID2 and assigned to T3. And T3 is basically your this entire expression, which is assigned to ID1. So this is how the intermediate code will be generated. So is it clear to you, the intermediate code generation part?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So after
Yes, ma'am.
this is a simple example. We don't need much of a code optimization. Only what they have done here is that this into float function, they have minimized in a single line, and they have used 60 as 60.0. They have straightway converted this into a float, and this line ID1, instead of using T3 is equal to ID is equal to T3, they are straightway assigning ID1 plus T1 to ID1. So four cores being converted to 2 cores. This is a very simple example of code optimization. When we'll go into that chapter, we'll learn many good like ways we'll do the code optimization. So, but this is just an example for this particular line, for this line. And once it is done, see, these 2 lines is ultimately converted into a assembly level machine dependent code. So any question you want to ask?
Hello, ma'am.
Any question you want to ask? I'm stopping the recording here.
Yes, ma'am. I want to ask something.
You want to ask something? Okay, I'm
Yes, ma'am.
stopping the recording. Okay, it's better.
Okay, ma'am.